Have you ever wondered what you'd do if an angel, a real, living, breathing angel, just crash landed in your backyard? It sounds like a dream, doesn't it? A sign, a blessing. But for one family, it was the beginning of the strangest story you've ever heard. Our story starts on a gloomy, rainy day. For 3 days, the world had been a single shade of ash gray. Pelayo and his wife, Elisenda, were at their wits' end. Their newborn was sick with a fever, and their house was invaded by crabs, scuttling everywhere. Pelayo had to wade through his muddy courtyard to throw them into the sea, a sea as gray and sad as the sky. It was on his way back that he saw it, a heap in the mud, groaning. He got closer, his heart pounding. It was an old man, a very, very old man, face down, struggling to get up. But what made Pelayo freeze in his tracks were the wings. Enormous, dirty, half-plucked buzzard wings, tangled in the mud. He ran to get Elisenda. Together, they stared at the creature. He was dressed like a rag picker, with a bald head and hardly any teeth. He was just a pathetic, drenched old man, except for those impossible wings. They tried talking to him, but he just mumbled in a strange dialect with a sailor's voice. They figured he must be a castaway from a shipwreck. But their neighbor, a woman who claimed to know everything about life and death, took one look and declared, "He's an angel. He must have been coming for the child, but the poor fellow is so old that the rain knocked him down." An angel? In their chicken coop. The next day, the whole town knew. Pelayo, not wanting to club a potential celestial being to death, had locked him up with the hens. When their child's fever miraculously broke overnight, they felt a surge of generosity. They planned to set the angel adrift on a raft. But by dawn, their courtyard was already packed. The whole neighborhood was there, treating the angel not with reverence, but like a circus animal, tossing him food through the wire mesh. Father Gonzaga, the local priest, arrived, alarmed by the news. He was a practical man, a former woodcutter, and he was immediately skeptical. He went into the coop, said good morning in Latin, the language of God, and the angel just murmured back in his own strange tongue. The priest noticed the angel smelled of the outdoors, had parasites on his wings, and looked far too human. The devil uses tricks to confuse the unwary, he warned the crowd. He promised to write to the bishop, to get a final verdict from the highest courts in Rome. But nobody listened. The news spread like wildfire. Elisenda, tired of cleaning up the mess left by the crowds, had a brilliant idea. She fenced in the yard and started charging 5 cents for admission to see the angel. The money started pouring in. Pilgrims came from all over, hoping for a miracle. A poor woman who had spent her life counting her heartbeats, a man who couldn't sleep because the stars were too loud, a sleepwalker who undid everything he did during the day. The courtyard became a chaotic carnival of human misery and hope. Through it all, the angel was the only one who seemed to take no part in his own spectacle. He just sat in his corner, patient and still. The crowd grew bolder. They poked him, pulled his feathers, and even threw stones at him to make him stand. Once, they branded his side with an iron, thinking he was dead. He awoke with a start, flapping his wings in a whirlwind of dust and chicken dung, his eyes filled with tears. It wasn't rage, they realized, but pain. After that, they were more careful. They understood his stillness wasn't laziness, but the calm of a sleeping catastrophe. Then, a new attraction came to town. A traveling show featuring a woman who had been turned into a giant tarantula for disobeying her parents. It was cheaper to see her, you could ask her questions, and her story was a simple, terrifying lesson. She had sneaked out to a dance, and a bolt of lightning had transformed her. This spectacle, so full of raw human truth, was far more compelling than the distant, silent angel. Soon, the crowds dwindled. The angel's reputation had also been tarnished by his miracles, which were more like cosmic jokes. A blind man didn't get his sight back, but grew 3 new teeth. A paralytic didn't walk, but almost won the lottery. The Spider-Woman completely crushed the angel's fame. Pelayo and Elisenda's courtyard was finally empty. But they didn't mind. They were rich. They built a new 2-story mansion with balconies and iron bars on the windows to keep angels out. Pelayo quit his job, and Elisenda bought fancy dresses. The only thing they neglected was the chicken coop, where the angel remained, a fading, smelly memory. Years passed. The angel became just another part of the household, like a stray dog. They'd shoo him out of the bedroom with a broom, only to find him in the kitchen moments later. Their son, no longer a baby, would play near him in the collapsing coop. The angel tolerated the boy's games with endless patience. He grew older, weaker. His eyes went foggy, and he bumped into posts. He was losing his last feathers. Pelayo took pity on him and let him sleep in the shed. One winter, he got so sick they thought he would die. They didn't even know what to do with a dead angel. But he survived, and as the first sunny days of spring arrived, something changed. Stiff, new feathers began to grow on his wings. He was careful, making sure no one noticed. One morning, Elisenda was in the kitchen cutting onions when a strong sea breeze blew in. She looked out the window and saw him. The angel. He was trying to fly. His first attempts were clumsy, awkward, tearing up the vegetable patch. But then, he managed to gain altitude. With the risky, ungainly flapping of an ancient vulture, he lifted himself over the houses. Elisenda let out a sigh of relief. For herself and for him. She watched him go, even after she finished with the onions. She kept watching until he was no longer an annoyance in her life, no longer a circus freak or a forgotten pet, but just an imaginary on the horizon of the sea. What a strange and powerful story about how we treat the unknown, the miraculous, and the things we cannot understand. If you were moved by this tale, please give this video a like and subscribe for more stories that make you think. Thanks for watching.